This is another special episode of Legends of the Twin Tiers Cornell Wrestling. We have a great guest with us here tonight. One only Cam Simaz, a Cornell national champion back in 2012, four-time All-American, and of course, four-time EIWA champion. He is the current assistant coach at South Dakota State University out there with Damian Hahn, a former Cornell coach as well. And Cam, we want to say thanks for joining us. It's awesome to have you here on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Andy.
Yeah, looking forward to talking all things your career, Cornell wrestling, your current state right now. Wanted to ask you first question: how did wrestling start for you? And obviously a big family, bunch of brothers too, wrestlers too.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that you asked that, because when I was little, I had this theory, and it proved to be incorrect. But my theory was that any wrestler that I was wrestling when I was a kid, so I probably started at 7, 8 years old, something like that. And my theory was that if they wrestled, if the kid was wrestling, their dad had to wrestle. Otherwise, why were they doing this, right? So every kid I asked is like, hey, did your dad wrestle? Oh yeah, my dad wrestled too. So that's why I'm wrestling. As you grow up, you realize people actually choose the sport, right? So it was kind of thrust upon me in a way. My dad wrestled, and then us 4 boys. So there's Eric, myself, Cam, and then Taylor and Kyle. We all wrestled as well. And I don't know. It's like, it's a tough sport, right? It's a very unforgiving sport. It's one of those individual sports where it's all on you. And I think when you're younger, it's very intense because of it. And sometimes it doesn't feel so good to lose, right? So I feel like baseball or t-ball at the time, and whatever the football, I think ours was Rocket League football. It feels a little bit less intense if you lost. And that there's something a little bit softer to that, right? As you grow older, I think you learn to appreciate that ownership of, hey, I won, or hey, I lost and it's on me. But when you're a kid, I think it's a little bit more attractive to be part of a team. And so I was always surprised when I'd meet another wrestler when I was like 8, 9, maybe growing up 10, and they're like, yeah, no, my dad didn't wrestle. I just chose this. It's like, what? Really?
It's like, wow, I got into the sport now, And Cam, I gotta say, all those brothers, the wrestlers, your dad being in the sport, there must have been some great Simaz battles over the years, I imagine.
Oh yeah, and there's scars, right? There's of course scars. We grew up outside of town by quite a ways, right? So it makes sense that I'm in South Dakota now, right? Because there's nobody out here. So it worked out well. We grew up outside of Fenville, but we commuted to Allegan for my like later elementary and middle school and high school years. And then my younger 2 brothers went to Allegan the entire time. So yeah, we and because of that, because of the structure there, we became best friends, right? Because I mean, you didn't have access to your friends at school because you lived 20 minutes away, 25 minutes away, whatever it was. So yeah, our brothers, yeah, we fought plenty. We wrestled, I suppose you could call it, but we were also super close because in part, who else are you going to be close with? And I think it was really good for our family growing up.
Yeah, in Michigan, obviously, you really had an amazing high school career, and winning states, and just leaving your mark in the sport out in Michigan. And I think as you get older, I have 2 older brothers as well. Same deal. We would a lot of competition, a lot of brotherly love, a lot of competition with that, and just seeing who was better in a lot of things. But in the end, I think as you get older, you become closer, and
Yeah,
because hey, you know what, they've got my back.
yeah, that's I think very similar for me and my family. Of course, there's some competition, right? Usually between the 2 that are a little bit closer. So Eric's my older brother, and he's 2 years older than me, right? So maybe we compete a little bit, but not really, Andy. I'm gonna be honest with you. He was 2 years older, but he was also probably at times like 50 pounds bigger than me. So he had the brawn, he had the muscle, and he wasn't often a guy I would mess with. And when I did, I quickly learned my lessons, right? So you could say there's a little bit of competition, but not really. But then there's a 5-year gap, right? And then there's Taylor and Kyle underneath me. And yeah, for sure, there's a little bit more competition between them, mostly because they're more physically similar, right? I don't know if, I think they're both 57-pounders in college, maybe 65, somewhere in there. And they were also, this is an older brother looking down on them too, right? They were a little bit more feisty with one another, when they were kids, especially. But like you said, right? You grow up and all that kind of fades away, and the realities of life kind of present themselves. And hey, you got to take on the world together.
Going into college, obviously you end up at Cornell under Rob Cole and staff there, and take us through that process of getting recruited. I'm sure a lot of schools are looking at you out of Michigan and beyond.
Well, yeah, I maybe. Listen, uh, it's kind of funny that you asked that. Of course, I'd like to think I was a highly recruited athlete. The reality, now I'm a coach and I can see it a little bit more clearly. Not really. Not really is the truth. I was recruited. I came into a recruiting class that was really stout going into Cornell, and I was surrounded by guys that were unbelievable, right? And it was just a really lucky deal that I kind of walked into Cornell when I did, and they were just on the upswing, and I got kind of like carried along with it. It's like, hey, you're either with us or you're not, right? It's like, well, I'm going to be with you guys because I'm here. But the whole recruiting process was I went to a few places. So I went to a few other Ivy Leagues, and then I went to Central Michigan too, because my older brother went to Central Michigan. My older brother, Eric, he wrestled 97 for them. And Central Michigan was the local choice, and it was a place that I was comfortable with because Eric was, of course, there, and I knew their system, and I knew their philosophies and their values and those type of things, right? So then when I went to Cornell, it was a very different. So it was either like I was going to go to Central Michigan or maybe one of these Ivy League schools. Cornell, it turned out to be a pretty easy choice for me because they had an unbelievable combination, especially at the time, and they still do, of athletics, which for me was specifically wrestling, of course. And it wasn't like it is today. Today, it's unbelievable. You look at what they're doing at Cornell, and it's like we were talking earlier, you got to applaud it. It's really unbelievable. So it wasn't quite there. They were on the early cusp of that, but they had the talent. They had the facilities, they had the coaching staff, they had the team, right? And you could kind of sense that. And on top of that, they had the personalities. So you're talking about Rob Cole. Of course, yeah, he brought me out, and he's the head of the program, but he really was, like we were discussing earlier, the CEO of the program. And he was like the first true CEO of a wrestling program. And it was really unique to see how he operated that organization. With that being said, I think, and you know how coaching staffs change and morph over time, but I think at the time it was Coach Hahn, who, lo and behold, I'm still with and I work with, right? It was Coach Hahn. I want to say it was Tyler Bear and Corey Cooperman was the staff, and Clint Wattenberg, who was another one of my mentors, was also on staff in a different capacity. So you look at that staff, and it was super easy to relate with, right? And I think that was what the most important piece was for me. I felt like I could get along with the guys. I felt like it checked both the boxes for the athletics and the academics. And then I felt like I could relate with these people, the staff. And if you can't get along and you can't build a relationship with the people that are going to coach you, I think you're always going to struggle. We believe that here, right? It's the same thing. Wrestling, and I think sports in general, is relationships. So I don't know if I understood that enough to articulate it when I was younger, but you could feel it, right? I can feel something and maybe not quite explain it. So for me, coming back from that trip, and I remember it pretty vividly, because I lied. I apologize, Andy. There was one more trip. And it was actually to UNC. So it was to Chapel Hill. And I was supposed to go out maybe 2 weeks after my Cornell visit. And how it went down is I called my dad up and I go, Dad, this is it. This is where I want to go. And he goes, well, of course he's reasonable and he's an adult, and he's like, slow down, and he's patient. Slow down. We won't make any calls or anything. You're going to come back and we'll talk. And of course, there's a financial aid package that comes back from Cornell, and they have to go. Like, my dad is, that's important, right? Yeah. And so he goes, pump the brakes a little bit, and we'll come back and we'll talk for a few days, and then we'll make a decision. But I kind of knew when I was on the trip, and 3 or 4 days later, I had to call up UNC and say, hey, man, I apologize. but I can't take this trip in good conscience because I already know where I'm going to go. I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste your funds and all those things. And yeah, I never went to UNC. Still haven't been to Chapel Hill, which might be a huge mistake, right? Because I hear
Wow.
awesome things about it.
Yeah, what a story, of how it ended up being destiny playing out in hand, and you go on, you win a national title, four-time All-American, four-time ENWA champion. On paper, 2012, the dream season for you, winning it all at the tournament. But would you put that right there as the top moment for you, Cornell wrestling, or was there a turning point for you that said, hey, you know what, like, not only I can compete at this level, I can win at this level?
Well, I don't want to keep correcting you, right? And this is not a correction, right? It was actually a challenging season for me, and here's why. I got hurt early on in the season. I got hurt at the body bar, and I hurt my hamstring. And I don't know, pulled, strained, whatever the correct nomenclature or whatever they call it. I hurt myself pretty bad at the body bar. So then I was out. Maybe we started in late October, middle October. So I was out all of October, all of November. My memory, I'm sure, fails me. I have a terrible memory. All of December, and I was getting ready again. And my first match was going to be the Southern Scuffle. So I was basically out more or less the first semester because I got a duel in, and then the body bar, and I got hurt, right? So it was actually super challenging because I wasn't sure if I was ready, to be completely honest with you. And it goes back to what I was talking about before, is having those relationships, having people that you can trust. And a guy that I would bring up is Chris Scarlatta, and he's still there. Chris Scarlatta was the trainer, and he was a guy I really, really trusted. And I knew between Chris Scarlatta and Coach Hahn and Clint Wattenberg, because those were the guys that really took me under their wing, those guys weren't going to put me out there unless I was truly ready. And trusted them. Trust me, I didn't feel 100%, but you get there throughout, because I had to wrestle all of January, all of February, and you finish mid-March. And yeah, it got better and better. And of course, like you said, it did finish the right way, or right way for me, I suppose. And of course, it was a good success for me, but I'm going to shoot you straight. In my opinion, the greatest thing and it didn't happen, right? So it's a hypothetical, but you said the greatest time in Cornell wrestling or something along those lines.
Yeah.
It would have been to win a team title. It really would have been. And we were so dang close twice, in 2011 and 2012. So my junior and senior, I apologize, 2010 and 2011. So my sophomore and junior seasons, we finished runner up. And my senior year, we actually scored the most points we've ever scored in school history. I don't know if that's still the case, but at the time it was. And we took fourth place. So we're like, come on. Like we put up serious points, and we ended up in fourth. Yeah. But to shoot you completely straight, Andy, if we were able to win a team title, I think that would be super easy. And I could say it confidently that would have been the greatest memory or greatest thing that we could have done at Cornell at the time.
You look back at those teams, how loaded they were, and guys stepping up to not just place high, but really reach the top of that podium. And one of our last shows we did was with Troy Nickerson, of course, winning the national title a couple weeks before his dad passed away. Just the team unity that existed back then. Of course, the evolution of Kyle Dake at that time, going on to win four different weight classes, making history there. So you look back on that time, and certainly you had that edge about you when you go on to be All-American, national champion. You're a different breed. They don't just grow on trees, those types of competitors. What makes a great wrestler in your eyes?
Well, I mean, in a way, you're kind of asking, who do you guys recruit, right? Like, because we're still in the wrestling business. And I think for us, it's a little bit different because of a few added factors for us out here in South Dakota State. But for the generic college wrestler or the college wrestling program, it comes down to basically three things, right? It comes down to, we like to call it the head, their heart, and basically their athletic ability. So athletic ability is pretty straightforward. You got to have, there's a certain threshold that you have to be somewhat athletic, right? You don't have to be the most athletic. Of course, if you are the most athletic, that's only better. That's only better, right? And that looks like a lot of different things in wrestling. And it looks like balance. It looks like strength. It looks like it's not just one thing, right? Wrestling is very dynamic, I feel like, in a lot of ways. But there is that athletic scale. You got to judge that. And then the other two is your head, right? Which to me is how tough are you, right? How tough? Like you're talking about the toughness, and you talk about the edge of the elite wrestlers. How what are they willing to do, right? How much X are they willing to do? And if they're able to push themselves past what is what's normal, or really what like reasonable people are willing to do, now you got something special there, right? And then I think the last thing is their heart, right? Like how much do they care about wrestling? And obviously that's really, really important. They got to really, people say love it, right? But it's got to be really important to them, because if it's really important to them, then they'll do the schoolwork. Then they'll show up on time. Then they'll do what they say they're going to do, right? Then they'll do the extra things to reach their goals. And that's the business that we're in as assistant coaches. I know head coaches have everything, they're doing everything, but as assistant coaches, we have some luxury in which we're in the business of helping other people achieve their goals, which is such an awesome thing. But in our experience, and we're coaches, right? So we observe with our eyes and we kind of listen with our eyes, right? What we've noticed is you got to really, really care, and it's got to be important to you. And if that's the case, then you'll see kids do almost anything to achieve their goals, which is really awesome.
Yeah, and amazing words, Cam. And yeah, I was talking actually here in our newsroom today even about about our business and how there's so many parallels to wrestling. And I apply a lot of my mindset as a wrestler to pushing through long hours, long days, going a little bit further every single time on a story, putting in the extra that extra hour and extra time to make yourself great. And I said one day, I think it's a generational thing. I don't know, if it is for everybody. I don't want to generalize like that, but it's when things for you or for me or for any of us stop becoming something you look at as being a privilege to do. When that leaves, then it's time to do something else, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I never come into this job every day, whether it's doing Cornell wrestling, covering a story locally, local colleges, pro sports, you name it. It's always an honor, because
Yeah.
it's something that God has blessed us with to do. And I think having there's that old adage of attitude and gratitude, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I look at every single day. And even just talking to you tonight, it's learning a lot about how your mindset is approaching it to coaching, and taking what you learn as a wrestler and applying it now as a coach. Because I find now too is, so if we have a young reporter coming in, or a younger person in sports who wants to intern with us, and you got to see what they're all about first. Do they really want to do this? Do you really want to be here? Do you really want to succeed? Do you want to excel? And for me, looking at them, it's like, okay, like what kind of expectations do you have of yourself, and then what kind of expectations can you meet of the program? If your program, any program. So it definitely, there's a lot of parallels there, and I love it. Talking about wrestling gets you amped up, and to me, it's the greatest sport in the world.
Well, I mean, I think you and I both know it's really hard to fake enthusiasm, right? You just can't do it. And people see through fake. People do. And we were talking a little bit about the transfer portal and stuff like that. And it's the truth, right? There used to be some stories that you'd hear that coaches would hoodwink kids to get them to their program, then they got them, right? Well, guess what? One benefit of the transfer portal is that doesn't work. So everybody is almost forced to be honest and transparent. Hey, this is what our program's like, because we know you're just going to leave if you don't like it. I think that was one benefit of really opening up the transfer portal. Now we've talked back and forth about pros and cons, of course, but I think that's good, right? I think that's good. I think that cuts away a lot of inefficiencies of trying to figure out, are you lying to me? Are you telling me the truth? Because that just wasted energy and time anyway.
Yeah, and 100%. And the future of the sport, I think wrestling is always growing. Women's wrestling is on the rise everywhere. We've got a bunch of local high school teams that have girls teams now. Local college, Elmira College.
Same out
One of
here.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the rise. And
Yeah.
they just wanted their chance.
Hmm.
These strong young women, these strong young ladies wanted their opportunity. And hey, if they can, we had a girl out here from Tioga, New York, Emily Sindoni, just won the national championship.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, at Virginia, down at Virginia Beach, and how she started to where she is now. They have their own girls team. She used to have to wrestle all the guys,
Yeah.
coming up through, and it was just like this moment of not just vindication, but this moment of triumph, that actually that finally the sport has, elevated itself, because people got behind it and believed in it.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I think that's going to be a big piece of the growth. I mean, when you've artificially barred 50% of the population out of it, and then you say, okay, you guys can do it, there's going to be a lot of growth there. There really is. And I think the taboo is finally erased, or it's erasing, it's going away, it's fading away from women's wrestling. And I think that people are more open to the idea, one, and that's obvious because it's grown like mad. And I think the girls and the women themselves are much more open to it, right? They're enthusiastic about it, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, and my next question, and obviously, whether it's a young lady, young man, young wrestler, mental toughness. Uh, Going a little bit further, we kind of hit on a little bit already. But can you take us back to your time as a competitor and what made you mentally stronger? Because you hear it a lot in the sport, but there's just certain levels of that mental strength that some guys just can't get to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question that you're asking, Andy. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm sure coaches across the country talk about this a lot, which is, can you teach toughness? Can you teach toughness? And a lot of us, I think, go back and forth. And I'll tell you where I'm at with it. It's it's something that you can cultivate, but it takes a lot of time. But it has to be self-driven, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
and what we found is, if you're going to teach it, I don't know if teach it's the right word, but maybe cultivate. If you're going to cultivate toughness, because you're right, it's very important in our sport. At some point in your college career, and really at some point every single year in your college season, it's going to get really hard, right? It's going to get really hard. You're not just going to be that much better than everybody you wrestle. At some point, you're going to wrestle somebody that's figured you out, or that's maybe better than you. Like, what are you going to do when you have that adversity? Are you going to rise to the challenge, or are you going to fold? Right? Obviously, we all want to choose the former, right? You want to rise to the challenge. Now, what the best scenario that we've come up with, you can do the mental training, you can do those type of things, but at some point you got to put yourself in a situation that's really difficult, right? And you got a choice. That's the choice. You fold or you rise, right? And if you rise, good, do it again, right? And then next practice, you put them in a situation where it's tough. And I think all we can really do is put them in those situations over and over and over again, encourage them to make the right choice, and hopefully they choose it. Of course, if you fail and you fold, guess what? Next practice, we're going to give you another opportunity. One of those deals, right? But I think it has to be an internal choice at some point. I can't just force you to be tough, Andy. That's just not going to happen, right? But you can choose to make yourself that. You can choose to make yourself anything you want in this world. Why can't you? Why can't you choose to make yourself mentally tough and fortify your head, right? Because this is the thing that's going to lead you through life, and it's certainly going to lead you through our sport.
but working with Damien, how special has that been, and how special is this run? Amazing tournament for you guys.
Yeah. Well, first, I'm going to shoot you completely straight, like I have this entire interview, right? He's the reason I'm here, right? He's the reason I'm here. I've had a shoot. You're putting me on the spot here with math, not my strongest suit, but I guess since 2008, I've known Coach Hahn, right? So it's been 15 years. Does that sound about right? 15 years I've known the man, and he's always treated me the right way. He's always treated me really, really well, and he's taken care of me. He took care of me my entire wrestling career, And now that we're linked up out here, and I've been out here for 5 years, he's taking care of me as an assistant coach. I like to think that I give everything I have too, from my perspective, from a career standpoint. But I think it's what were we talking about earlier? Relationships, right? We're talking about relationships. I like to think that it's not so surprising that in a world as small as wrestling, that you cross paths a lot. And I have a lot of loyalty to Coach Hahn. I basically had my entire wrestling career to Coach Hahn and Coach Clint Wattenberg, right? Those are the two guys that really mentored me throughout my collegiate career. And now I'm able to link up with Coach Hahn on the industry side of it, right? So yeah, he's been instrumental for a significant portion of my life. So I honestly, I'm 34 now. I do it for 5 more years. That'll be half my life. That's a significant person in your life. So I have a lot to credit him for probably any success that I've had in the sport of wrestling. And I don't think it's a surprise at all that I jump at the opportunity to come out here and help him, although it was a difficult choice at the time. And you're talking about this past season, Andy. Yeah, we had some success this past season, but it didn't happen in 1 year. You know that. It took a long time. It was really hard those first years. We got out here in 2018, and that first year was really, really difficult. And then you slowly get some traction, right? I'm ecstatic that we had 2 All-Americans and we had 2 others in the round of 12, the blood round, and then we had dang near everybody else win matches at the national tournament. We had 8 qualifiers. That's phenomenal. I think that's the most that South Dakota State has ever had. I think that's a testament to what we're trying to build here, which is a team-oriented program. I know Coach Hahn believes this, and I do as well. If we're going to have success in a place like SDSU, we got to do it as a team. We really, really do. And I like to think that rings true with how we lead the program. And I think it rang true at the national tournament. So yeah, we had 8 guys this past year. We had 2 All-Americans and 2 others in the blood round. We had a national finalist in Tanner Sloan, and he's a takedown away from being a national champ. That's amazing. Now, as well as I do, it doesn't stop there, right? You got to keep going. So we graduate our heavyweight, AJ Nevels, and then honestly, everybody else comes back. So on paper, it looks like we're poised to have another good team this coming year. But just like we're talking about, it's not about peaking, and then peak another 5 years. It's about sustaining. Our goal is to be a top 10 program perennially. That's our goal. We want to be a top 10 program on an annual basis and show that consistency, show that ability to get there and then stay there. I think that would be a true testament to what we're trying to do.
Well, you talk about the consistency and just building it up, and I know that little by little you keep growing. All of a sudden, those little peaks of growth become huge parts of the process. You look at the facility upgrades, all the things that have been happening out there, just amazing. And when people start to really see what it's all about, whether it's a Cornell wrestling in the mid '90s, in between. Spates to Cole and Cole to Gray now all these years, and how they've evolved and what's going on there. It's really a thing of beauty in my opinion. And for you guys to, take what you've been given and, as you said, have those tough, grind them out years, and come back strong, come back stronger. And they say the champion always rises. That's one of my favorite things to say. And you guys are proving that it's the championship mentality. And certainly next year, we're all going to keep a close eye on what goes on out west.
Yeah, please keep. I don't know. You probably tracker like for our stuff or something. You can put it on a tracker or something like that. Please do. It reminds me. You mentioned the facility, right? It reminded me of what you were talking about earlier about gratitude, right? So it's really nice right now because frankly speaking, our facilities weren't great before this facility, and we had a wrestling room, right? We had a small locker room, and then our offices, and they're elsewhere. But now it's been a huge upgrade, and it's really, really easy to be grateful, right? To walk into this, it's unbelievable, Andy. It's a $6 million facility, and it truly is a facility. It's got 4 full mats. It's got I'm actually in our office right now. I could probably show you, but I'm not going to. We got coach's office. We got the lounge, right? It's truly a remarkable wrestling facility. But the challenge that we're having, or not having, but the challenge that we foresee us having is it's easy for our kids to be extremely grateful now, right? Because they went from something that wasn't this to what this is.
Right.
And they walk in every single day, and it's really difficult not to be happy to be here. What about in 5 years? What about when nobody on our team at the time has had not the good stuff, right? When you walk into a palace, when you walk into it, that's going to be the true test, I think, for our team when it comes to appreciating everything that you're given. And like, honestly, dude, it's the opportunities, because they go hand in hand. Appreciating everything that, including the opportunities that come your way and taking advantage of them. The facility has been a big change. It's been a big change for us, and I don't know. I mean, you guys are back in New York, and I know Cornell's facility is unbelievable. Although I haven't seen it yet, we're gonna have to do a duel or something so we can fly out, come back to Ithaca and see the new facility, because I've heard unbelievable things about it, and it's really, really nice. But I have to put my own 2 eyes on it.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like, you see something in pictures or on video, but until you're actually in that tangible environment, that's when things start to sink in. But hey, I'm sure Coach Mike Gray, who we want to thank him for, giving us the recommendation to reach out to you. I asked him, hey, who should we talk to? And he brought your name up very fondly, and certainly teammates and all that back in the Cornell wrestling days. And just 2 more quick questions, though, Cam. This has been awesome here right now on Legends of the Twin Tiers. We want to thank you. Is your legacy in Cornell wrestling? I mean, you look back at all the accomplishments and all the work you put in, and the sweat and that sweat equity that you guys built up. What would you say that would be?
Man, Andy, I wish I could gloat. I really, really do. But you have to remember the team I was on. Andy, I was never the best one on the team. So you're talking about a legacy. I'm not so arrogant to think that I'm going to have much of a legacy. I was really, really, like I told you, I was lucky to show up at the right time, at the right place, with the right individuals to kind of get swept up in what was going on. I really do, and I mean this sincerely. I have to credit any success I had in the sport to literally the people around me. You have to remember, yeah, Coach Hahn, he was a 2-time national champ. He was my coach, right? Coach Cole was a 4-time All-American national champ from UNC. Cooperman was, the staff was unbelievable. Clint was a 2-time All-American for Cornell, right? He stayed there, and he was a vital part of the program. But then even the guys on the team, right? So you talk about Mike Gray. He was a year above me. He was a 2-time All-American. Kyle Dake won 4 titles, I think 2 before me, and then 1 after me, and then 1 with me, right? Steve Bozak, my roommate, he won a national title the same year I did. Jordan Lean, Troy Nickerson, who's already been on the show. They all won national titles. We were kind of joking before, right? If you're gonna interview every national title wrestler from Cornell, you're gonna have plenty of work, right? So I think it's a little bit, I don't know, silly to think that I stand out amongst. How about Mac Lunas? I think he was just in the Hall of Fame induction.
Yeah, this past weekend.
Yes, I hope he got up there and he's unbelievable. He's an unbelievable guy. Andy, I'm telling you, and this is completely honest, I was in the wrestling room for 4 or 5 years with Mac Lunas. I didn't once take him down, right? So how could I sit here and honestly tell you, oh, this is my legacy? Because it's just not true, right? When you're surrounded by greatness, I think you gotta get pulled up with it. I really do.
Wow, that's very humble of you to say, Cam. But yeah, I will say this: look at some of these numbers. The most ever matches in Cornell history, 166. That's you, 166.
All right,
still standing today.
Andy,
a lot of guys are wrestling less these days. No, I got a couple more. Bonus point victories, 93 in your career. That's second all time. Pins, your pin machine, 47, and that's amazing. Third all time. I mean, it's I think humble is being great, but certainly you made your stake for sure at Cornell, without a doubt.
I think that's it right there. So my legacy will be, hey, Cam, get out there and wrestle again. Yes, sir, I'll go. Like, that'll be my legacy. I never said no.
I love it, man. It's great. But Cam, no, this has been an awesome night. Thank you again. My last question for you, and kind of a two-sided thing in wrestling, or even if it's just a life advice, best advice you've ever received, and the best advice you could give.
That's tough, right? That's you're the absolute best, right? Well, of course, it's not going to be the absolute best, right? If I'm shooting off the cuff here. Oh boy, if I mean, when it comes to our program and when it comes to our guys, it just comes down to effort, right? Like when it comes to wrestling, I'm going to talk about wrestling specific, and you already alluded to a lot of wrestling like bleeds into life, and a lot of the same lessons and values are the same thing. One thing that I think we've all learned in competition is, hey man, you walk off the mat, and if you just gave everything you possibly had, it almost never matters what the result is. You come off and you're proud. I don't care if it's a job, right? I've come away from jobs where I gave everything I had. And did we have the best results? Maybe, maybe not. But man, I felt good about what I poured in. I felt good about the energy. I felt good about the work. I felt good about maybe parts of what we were able to do. And that feels really, really, really good. The same thing in wrestling, right? You walk off the mat. Hey man, you're talking about all those matches, 166 or whatever. I walked off some of those matches and I got pummeled. But I can tell you honestly, after my pummeling, I walked off there with my head held high because I gave it everything I had, literally everything I had. I mean, you wrestled in Fargo, right? Before before we started, you mentioned that, and I remember learning this lesson very vividly. There was a match in Fargo that I was at, right, and I lost, of course, but I didn't try as hard as I could have. I really didn't. And I walk off the mat and I was like, I'm not mad I lost. I'm mad because I didn't try. And I like to think that I never made that mistake again. And so I think in terms of advice, I guess that would be one advice I would give, whether it's our kids, whether it's our kids in wrestling, or whether it's outside of those things. Like you and I are in the real world now, but it's the same stuff, man. It's the same stuff. Walking away with some pride. There's more to that than people would like to give credit to, I think.
Boy, Cam Simaz, thank you. And I got to tell you, such a humble guy, upbeat, positive. I love it. 166 total matches, but you won 145. Pretty incredible when you look back on it at the college Division I level. And so we want to say thank you for being on Legends of the Twin Tiers. I will leave it up to you. I always do this for everybody. Any final thoughts you want to share with us? I mean, whether it's Cornell out at South Dakota State now. Cornell had an amazing year this year, third in the nation. Yanni Takamas winning four. Vito coming out there doing his thing, winning at 33. Just an amazing year for them.
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm a Cornell alum. Watching them compete really all year. And sometimes we wrestle them, right? Hey, in those, I'm gonna be honest with you, in those matches, I wanted my guy to win, right? I did, but I'm really impressed with the job that Mike is doing and that staff, and you really got to be proud of Cornell wrestling and where it's at. It seems like it's in really, really good hands, and they're moving in the right direction. Unbelievable national tournament. Really unbelievable national tournament to finish Yanni out the way that he did, and then Vito was on fire. And dude, don't look past Voca, and they had a number. Their 41 pounders really, really good. I think that they're going to be. I think they're going to be tough moving forward. Now I should tout my team too, right? But
yes, of course.
No, I'm gonna leave it be. We're talking from the Cornell perspective. I think there's a lot to be happy about, proud about. And the future looks bright there too.
Cam Simaz, thank you so much for joining us on Legends of the Twin Tiers. We wish you nothing but the best, and keep doing great things and keep excelling out west.
Appreciate it, Andy. Thank you so much.